Penn State wrestling fans, Pennsylvania wrestling fans, we are back. PennLive's wrestling podcast is back. We had to take a little holiday break. I'm Bob Flounders with Jim Carlson. Eager to talk. We're going to focus on Penn State this podcast. We don't have a guest, but we have a lot to get to with you, Jimmy. A lot of notes. Penn State's season is just starting, I think, to get interesting. I know you're looking forward to it. We have some notes. I love the name of this. I just every time I hear this every year, I love it. The Southern Scuffle. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about you had some stories on PennLive. You've got some nice talking points from Cael Sanderson about how they kind of keep wrestlers in the program, even if they're not stars. Also, Cael shared some thoughts on wrestlers staying healthy during the grind of a grueling physical season by trying to wrestle smart. And we have some individual notes on some Penn State wrestlers that we hope to get to. And we're also going to talk, I think, a little bit about Penn State's next match at home at Michigan State. We're recording this on Tuesday before Penn State's Orange Bowl game, but there's enough. In addition to Penn State, Notre Dame, Penn State's wrestling Michigan State. We're going to talk about that. We'll talk about that too. But I know I'm talking a lot right here. I just wanted to get to all the bases. How are you, Jimmy?
I'm great, Bob. Great, Bob. Looking forward to the big start of the Big Ten wrestling season as you depart from Miami and a little warmer climes.
Let's hope. Yeah, I looked at the forecast. It looks pretty good, but I'm never quite sure what weather we're going to have. Jimmy, I got to tell Penn State fans this too. They felled the press box on Saturday. They blew up the press box to kind of trigger the start of the stadium renovation that's going to go through like 3 years. But that was the first thing to go. And it was cold, and there was a lot of snow. I think it only snowed in State College, but it got a little tricky trying to get to Beaver Stadium once you got to State College, because there was like 4 inches of snow on the ground and no one was ready for it. So my point is, I'm always a little antsy about the weather.
Well, it goes, it doesn't just affect football, right? The Southern Scuffle, Nick Lee was the coach down there for the Southern Scuffle. He had 9 guys, none of the starters, but they ended up winning it. Anyway, their flight was canceled. They got a flight to Chicago where they were going to get a flight to State College. That flight was canceled. He ended up renting some sort of vehicle and drove them home yesterday.
That's crazy. That is crazy. That was was that in Tennessee? Jimmy, do I have that right?
Chattanooga, yeah.
Chattanooga, Tennessee. So it's the Southern Scuffle. I love the name. And I think Penn State's program is going to get a lot out of this because it was an opportunity for them to compete. And, the A-listers, it wasn't really about them. It was about some of the guys that got a chance. And it sounds to me like Cael was really happy with the way some of these guys got some work in.
Yeah, Zach Ryder, freshman Zach Ryder, freshman Connor Mirasola, and his twin brother Cole Mirasola all won titles. Connor Pierce was second at 149. It was the last 3 guys, Ryder and Mirasola was 84, 97, and heavyweight, all won those titles down there. And, it was Ryder, I'm thinking possibly could be at 184 next year. Some people are saying that Josh Barr will go back down to 184. I'm not sure about that, although, Mirasola would probably like that to happen. But Barr said it would be a tough cut for him, but we'll see what happens. But Ryder could step in there. Levi Haynes will be back at 74. But Cole Mirasola is, they're trying to bulk him up to replace Greg Kirkley at heavyweight. A little light right now, but I think, give him a year or so. And he won this tournament, beat a couple guys from Army one of them had beaten a guy from Virginia Tech who had been in the lineup. So, were they high quality wins? No, but they were certainly quality wins for those guys. And again, it's a bright future when you look at the recruiting class and the guys coming back and guys coming in. And
yeah, it is. It couldn't be much brighter, Jimmy, with what Cael has built and the depth and the people coming in and the wrestling clubs, all of it is just, it's so impressive. They're going to be really, really tough to beat moving forward for an extended period of time. But I just love, one of the things I love as we move along here on PennLive's wrestling podcast, I'm Bob Flounders, talking with Jim Carlson, who covers the Penn State program for PennLive. One of the things that I love about Cael is his commitment to the big picture. And it's not always about the best wrestlers on the team. You got him, he was talking a little bit about kind of where they are this season. And, I think it's interesting what he had to say about, when you have a program like this, it's got to be tempting in this day and age that if you're not the guy right away, you're looking to go someplace to be the guy. And it sounds like Cael's open, confident about how he's able to keep guys from transferring out. And he had some interesting quotes, right?
He did. And people wonder all the time, how do they keep all these guys? Yeah. And it's certainly a fair question. You would definitely have, and it's not easy building depth with 9.9 scholarships. Now that will change next year and we'll see how that works out. But for my lifetime, it's been 9.9 scholarships, and it's not easy to build depth. And you see some forfeit sometimes and things like that. You don't see them here, but yeah, I mean occasionally, but not pretty seldom. But he spoke to that on Monday. It was a pretty good question, one of the younger guys, but. How do they stay? How do you keep them here, right? And if I can, I will just quote verbatim, where he says, I just think we have a special thing going here. It's bigger than winning or being a starter or being the man. It's how Cael started. And if you can make the lineup at Penn State, you can win the national tournament. I mean, pretty true, right?
Well, he's not lying. It's actually true. It rings true.
Right. Some of these kids, I think they want to win the national tournament. Some kids want to be a 4-year starter. All depends on the kids, what their working goals are, he said. History has shown, he continued, that it's a really good place to attack your goals on the international scene, as you can tell by the Olympics, this past fall. Yeah, our kids get better. They enjoy what they're doing, and I think that's a big part of them getting better. There's very few cases of kids that are coming in each year that aren't getting better. And when they're seniors, they're much better as seniors than they were as freshmen in a tough sport, he said. But I think it's just a big picture thing. Kids that are coming in want to be the best version of themselves, and they feel like this is a place for them to do that. If you come here, you're going to get better. And he says, that just happens, right? So it's pretty direct, but those words are rung true.
Yeah,
over the years.
Yeah, so. And Jimmy, I just think it kind of aligns with we had Clay Stedman on the podcast. I believe around the holidays, and he's the new GM for Penn State. We had a really good conversation. If you haven't checked out that podcast, I do recommend it. He was great, but he talked about trying to wrestle for Cael, and he was not by any means a star. But he had some interesting, tough conversations with Cael right away. He was very direct. Cael was with Clay about him and his place at Penn State. But he also talked, Jimmy, if you remember, about the environment that Cael creates and the attitude he creates about, this isn't drudgery, what we're doing. It's like Jim Harbaugh, who's got it better than us, coming to practice, the way that he incentivizes kind of guys to get better in practice, the practice partners. It's really a fun thing, I think, to be at a Penn State wrestling practice and not something you don't look forward to. I don't think it's an easy environment to create, but I think the payoff is there. If you listen to Cael, and you can stay healthy, by the end of the year, you're going to be tough. And I just think that's kind of one of the things, Jimmy, that separates this Penn State program and Cael Sanderson and his staff from a lot of good programs. And I think what he talks about keeping guys, that's all part of it, right?
Oh, it is. And I think people sometimes make fun of the program as often as he says, we just want to have fun, and how often the guys say want to have fun. But I don't know, I think they really do. However he structures it, I mean, we don't see the actual practice. We're there before it, and then, we have to leave. But it's funny because years ago, I don't know, somebody was asking about how they stay in shape or how they get in shape and about running and things like that. And he goes, well, you get in wrestling shape by wrestling. And I think that's what they do. I don't think they're out there doing cross country with the cross country team, right? And that's what they do. They wrestle a lot, and they go through every team goes through various training cycles. I'm pretty sure they just had one over the break, or just getting back. And
Right.
and sometimes you'll get to a dual meet, and maybe they won't be quite as sharp because they're perhaps ending a particular cycle. But there's a goal in sight beyond that.
Yeah. Big picture.
I would expect them to be pretty sharp this week against Michigan State, even though they probably won't need to be. I don't think Michigan State can challenge this team in any way, shape, or form. Now, next week, they go out to Nebraska, and we can talk about that next week, but it's a lot better matchups, next Friday than there are this Friday.
Right. It's PennLive's wrestling podcast. We're moving on here. Jimmy Carlson and Bob Flounders here talking about kind of where Penn State is right now in their season. It's just starting to the Big Ten season is really just getting started. They're going to have a match with Michigan State on Friday, the day after Penn State's Orange Bowl game with Notre Dame. But, moving along here, another quote from Cael, pretty compelling. Just, to wrestle at this level in college, the physicality and the quality of the sport, maintaining the discipline, it's a grind, and you never know what's going to happen in a match. Injuries just can happen depending upon, you be winning a match and still get hurt just because of the way wrestling matches play out. And I think you asked Cael just about, is there a way, is there an approach, or is there something you can do to kind of get your wrestlers thinking about not only just winning and developing and getting better, but trying to wrestle smart to kind of stay out of dangerous situations?
Yeah, and it's the past few years, there have been a couple of times where a guy or two have gotten hurt. When we ask about him, and he's almost perturbed that they've gotten hurt because he thought that they didn't have to be in the situation they were in. And if you think back to last year with Carter Strachey,
right,
against Edinburgh at the very end of the season, right? And he already has a tech fall wrapped up, but the guy kept wrestling, and Carter kept wrestling, and he could have, basically he could have stopped that. He could have settled for the tech fall. He ended up going for the fall, gets his knee twisted, falls back, and people are just in their seats, they're just dead silent. And
right.
Strachey's hurt. I mean, he's untouchable, right?
Yeah.
And as it ends up, Strachey did not go to the Big Tens.
Right.
He did end up winning the Nationals on basically on one leg. It was quite a performance. But, when in Cael, that was his point through all this then and even yesterday, when he was saying a lot of it is your training and your mentality, and a lot of little things. He says, but a lot of it's up to the individuals also. You have to stay out of positions in which they're compromised, right?
Yeah.
And their knees and their ankles. And as you watch wrestling, he says, our guys can throw caution in a way that they're trying to win a single scramble, but that scramble can cost you 8 months of recovery time if you hurt yourself.
Right.
So a lot of it's fundamentals, principles that kids do. Some kids do a better job than others at it. But he says, he says, we're not the experts, but one of the things we're trying to figure out is just like everybody else as we go along, and how to stay healthy.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting approach.
It is an interesting approach, and it's great to hear him talk about that. Talk about being your guy gets hurt, he wins a bout, and he's wrestling full out, but that's not necessarily kind of, when you look about the big picture, that's not necessarily what Cael was looking for. And he just has a unique perspective. I know he's not the only one, but it's Cael's way, right? It's you got to think about everything. If you want to get to your ultimate goal, if you want to be as good as you can be, and if you want to stay healthy, and it's the attention to detail, it's the little things, and to hear him talk about that, I think it's pretty cool, Jimmy. I wanted to, as we move along here, I just wanted to talk with you real quick about one match in particular that's happened recently, and it was Keegan O'Toole and Levi Haynes. That bout specifically, the ramifications of that bout. Levi actually lost the match, I believe, in overtime, but I know you thought it was a great bout, and I wanted to get your perspective on that.
It was, two, just top-notch, high-quality wrestlers, and both had their fair share of shots. Both are very good on defense. So it goes into sudden victory. I still call it overtime, but it goes into sudden victory. And I believe it was Haynes who got off the shot, but O'Toole just kept coming around. I think he sort of came out the back. Levi they threw a challenge brick, but he didn't have control for long enough, I don't think. I sort of agree with the call. But O'Toole ended up winning it 4-1. Now, O'Toole is out for the month of January. He had I think he had some sort of injury going in. I believe that then it was aggravated.
Yeah.
And so we're talking about injuries. Penn State so far has been lucky. Missouri, for example, has lost 2 starters, and now they've lost O'Toole for the month of January, and they hope it's just for the month of January. So you just don't know how those things like that are going to happen. But Cael said yesterday that, Levi's fine. He hates to lose, but, he has no concern over him with that bout. It was two, like I said, good bout, 2 good guys. No concern for Levi, according to Cael.
Yeah, I just love it when 2 great wrestlers in the middle of the season. Let's just see where we're at, right? Let's just see where we're at. I'm not going to back down. You're not going to back down. Sounds like it lived up to its hype. And if anything, knowing the way Penn State is, knowing the way Cael is, knowing the way Levi is, this will actually benefit him more than probably hurt him. If anything, it gives him a goal. And I'm sure he's even, if it's possible, to be more motivated. He is probably that guy. So we'll keep an eye on that. Hopefully Keegan can get healthy, because that's what we want to see. We want to see that again, right? We don't want any easy pass. We want to see Penn State pushed, and I think Penn State needs to be pushed. So that's pretty great. Jimmy, let's talk real quick. I wanted to, as we get close here to the end of this PennLive wrestling podcast, I wanted to talk to you just a little bit about, you mentioned Michigan State and you mentioned the match, and it might not be very competitive, but still in the big picture with Penn State and how you think they'll be in that match. And also just for the fans, just if you can just kind of talk about the winning streak, kind of where it is, where it's headed. Is it possible? How far can they go this year if they want to become, the longest winning streak, in the sport? It sounds to me like if they're going to do it, they'll probably have to do it next year. But just kind of all of the big picture stuff, even if the Michigan State match isn't super competitive, there are still goals to be attained for this team.
Sure, and I don't think this program likes to talk about streaks, but it's a fan thing, and I believe they like to talk about it. I think that I just don't see how this week's match will not be another shutout. If it is, it would be the 4th shutout just this season. They've given up 9 points in 6 matches. 2 starters have lost. 1 sub has lost. They've won 57 out of the 60 bouts so far. This week's match would be win number 63. If they keep winning, they would be able to surpass Iowa's streak of 69. That can happen this year. What cannot happen is Oklahoma State's overall streak of 76 straight wins, which happened decades ago. That would, if they keep winning again, that would happen next season, probably in December, I would think.
Yeah.
But it's it's a barometer of the sport, right? If you're winning 76 straight matches, yeah, you're pretty doggone good, and that's what this program is doing right now.
Yeah, it's certainly something. I know you're right. They might not want to talk about it. The fan base is enthralled by it, and they should be, because you just don't see this is rare air. This is where Penn State is, and it's going to be that way for a while. It's got to be great to be a Penn. Is there ever been a better time maybe to be a Penn State fan? I'm sure they're thrilled, and they're going to show out for Michigan State, and I know that there's some intrigue, I guess, the following week at Nebraska. And I also know there's a couple of matches in January that I think the fans are looking forward to, including it's a home match against Iowa. And that, to me, is going to be pretty fantastic. I know you're looking forward to it as well, Jimmy.
31st at the Jordan Center, followed the next Friday. That's a Friday. And then the next Friday is at home at the Jordan Center as well against Michigan.
Yeah.
But yeah, and like I said, we'll get to Nebraska next week, but some pretty good bouts next week, although they were upset by Northern Iowa last week, which surprised me. So there's still a lot of good teams out there.
All right, Jimmy, it's been a pleasure here on the PennLive Wrestling Podcast, catching up with you about the Penn State wrestling team. I don't like to often take my eye off of the Penn State football team, but I will always do it for the Penn State wrestling team. I think they're fascinating. I'm looking forward to spending more time with you once the Penn State football season is over, up in State College, maybe getting a chance to talk to some wrestlers in Cael. But January is going to be just a lot of fun, and February as well. And as you said, as we move forward on the PennLive Wrestling Podcast, just remember, Penn State fans, it's also going to be about Pennsylvania wrestling as well. We're going to try and highlight some things that are going on throughout the state. We're going to try and get some good guests on the show. We've already had a couple of really good guests, but we're just trying to kind of paint the picture of the season, not just for Penn State, but also what's going on nationally and in the state of Pennsylvania. It's a wrestling hotbed still. And one of the reasons why it's a wrestling hotbed is because of the fans like Jimmy, like the fans who grew up watching the sport and now cover the sport, and they cover it in such a great way. So Jimmy, get your rest. I will be eventually. This Penn State football season is going to come to an end, win, lose, or draw. So once that happens, it's going to be you and me, and it's going to get a lot busier. I'm looking forward to it, and I know you are as well. But Jimmy, any final thoughts before we sign off here?
Well, Bob, I think we'll see you up here for the Iowa match on the 31st.
I might surprise you, Jimmy. I might be up there before that. We're going to probably do a little talking about that. I'm game. Like Iowa for sure. Whenever I can get up there, whether it's an availability or another match, I don't care if it's a shutout. I just want to. I want to see that. I want to see that program. I want to see them. I want to get more up to speed because they're going. I would imagine they're only going to continue to get better with the goal being nationals in Pennsylvania later in the season.
Right. That will be a very tough ticket. And it's a tough ticket here as well. Iowa's already sold out. The rec halls are sold out, even though you can get them online. I think Michigan State, you could get a ticket this week for a pretty fair price. But it's a ticket. It's a thing that people want to see, and they come out in the winter, and it's a lot of fun to watch it.
All right, JB, great chatting with you. That's it for this edition of the PennLive Wrestling Podcast. We will be back next week, maybe with a guest, but we'll have an update on Michigan State, and we'll preview some matches to come. It's going to be a fantastic season.